My hand gripped the pistol tightly, sweat beading on my palm. I wasn't a special forces soldier bravely storming into battle, but merely an Omega spy sent into the enemy's lair. My boss said my natural pheromone scent would help me get closer to the target. Any alpha who caught a whiff of it would practically go crazy. But I never imagined this mission would be so dangerous. The information we needed was evidence to incriminate Silus Blackwood, the formidable alpha mafia boss behind all the city's corruption. I crept into the large, abandoned warehouse. Faint whispers of conversation came from a dark corner. I scanned my surroundings, my caution skyrocketing. I knew that if I were caught, my life would be as good as over. The plan was to collect information from Silus's private office, but this place seemed more unusual than I'd anticipated. I could feel the increasingly intense alpha pheromones, a scent that blended power and primal wildness. It wasn't just the scent of a typical alpha. It was the scent of an alpha entering rut. Panic spread through my body as I realized I'd arrived at the worst possible time. An alpha in rut is extremely dangerous, especially for an Omega like me. His pheromones were heavy and oppressive, making my chest vibrate. It was alluring and dangerous all at once. I tried to control my breathing to keep it quiet and tried to suppress my own pheromones from escaping, but my naturally sweet scent began to spread unknowingly. Footsteps grew closer and closer until I could barely breathe. My heart pounded like a war drum. A flashlight beam swept across the area, and then the tall, imposing figure of Silus Blackwood appeared. He had a tense expression, his eyes slightly red from being in rut. I saw him staring at the corner where I was hiding. His alpha instincts were leading him straight to me without fail. He walked closer and closer until I could feel the intense heat radiating from his body. Then he stopped right in front of me. My uncontrollable pheromones must have hit his nose full force. I felt a jolt as he seized my arm tightly, the squeeze on my wrist making me wince in pain. I never thought an assassin would have such an alluring scent. A low, husky voice whispered in my ear. His tone was filled with hunger and danger. I instantly knew my entire plan had fallen apart. The vice-like grip on my wrist made me flinch violently. I struggled, but it seemed futile. The strength of an alpha in rut was immense. He was unlike any alpha I had encountered before. I stared into his eyes, which were turning a deeper shade of red. The thought of using my gun to scare him crossed my mind, but his current state made me hesitate, wondering if it would only worsen the situation. I could feel the heat radiating from his body, drawing closer and closer. His pheromone scent, mixed with a faint metallic tang, made me slightly dizzy. He shoved me against a wooden crate, the old wood groaning under the impact. I tried to push him away with all my might, but the more I struggled, the tighter his grip became. His hot breath brushed against my neck. My own pheromones, which I tried so hard to suppress, erupted even more, like fuel thrown onto a fire. I knew my body, as an Omega, was responding uncontrollably to his scent. I cursed myself internally for being so reckless. He grabbed my face, tilting it up before his lips crushed down fiercely onto mine. The violent, fiery sensation of his kiss made my entire world spin for a moment. My carefully laid plans shattered. In this critical moment, instinct took over. I could barely stand under his oppressive presence. I felt as if I'd been caught in a storm. The light from outside seemed to fade, leaving only darkness and the scent of an alpha filled with desire, and my own scent, responding to it undeniably. The first rays of dawn filtered through the old window, and I stirred awake. I could barely move my body from the exhaustion of the previous night. Every part of me ached. I lay on the cold concrete floor, a coat loosely draped over me. Silus's pheromone scent still permeated the air around me, a mix of the alpha's fierce aroma and my own faint, sweet scent. I looked around and saw Silus Blackwood sleeping not far from me, still deeply unconscious from the rut. His face in slumber looked more relaxed than I expected. I seized the opportunity immediately. I struggled to my feet, pain shooting through my body, but I gritted my teeth and endured. The only thing on my mind was escaping this place as quickly as possible. I didn't dare to look back at the sleeping alpha. I slowly opened the warehouse door, making as little noise as possible. The cool morning air helped me feel a bit refreshed. I immediately ran as fast as my body allowed, down the desolate road, heading towards my small apartment not far from the port. I left behind the mistake and the one-night encounter that I couldn't forget. I only hoped this incident wouldn't affect my mission and my life too much. But deep down, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. After returning to my room, the first thing I did was wash myself. I scrubbed my skin vigorously, as if to completely erase Silus's scent from my body. But the alpha scent still clung to me, a scent that was both repulsive and captivating at the same time. I stood under the warm water for a long time, letting the physical pain distract me from the confusion in my mind. When I was done, I prepared to report to my superior. The atmosphere at the Westenberg Central Police Station seemed gloomier than usual. Telephones rang intermittently, and officers hurried about with grim expressions. I walked straight to Chief George's office. My boss was an elderly man with a weathered face. He always spoke frankly. "Damian, come in." Chief George's stern voice boomed as soon as I knocked on the door. I walked in and sat down across from his desk. The chief stared at me with an unreadable gaze. "How was the mission? Did you get the evidence?" I lowered my head slightly, trying to gather my words to explain the situation without revealing the whole truth. I made a mistake, Chief. I managed to get close to Silus Blackwood, but the plan failed. He became aware of me. I almost got caught, so I had to retreat empty-handed. I didn't tell him about my encounter with the Alpha, knowing well that it was inappropriate and could negatively impact my career. The chief sighed heavily. "I understand it was dangerous, but it's a shame. We've missed a crucial opportunity." He looked at me with slightly softened eyes. "Go rest, Damian. You look very tired." I nodded and stood up. A wave of relief washed over me when the chief didn't press for more details. I walked out of the police station with mixed feelings of relief and disappointment. I had escaped, but the mission had completely failed. I was pondering my next steps, wondering how to proceed since the main mission had failed. I needed to find another way to gather the crucial evidence my boss required. As many thoughts swirled in my head, I sensed something was wrong. The feeling of being watched, from somewhere unseen, grew increasingly distinct. I tried to subtly glance around, but saw no one particularly suspicious. I quickened my pace slightly, hoping to escape this unsettling sensation. But then, a shadow suddenly lunged at me from behind. Before I could react, a mysterious hand, holding a cloth soaked in some chemical, clamped firmly over my mouth and nose. The acrid smell of the chemical made me dizzy and quickly weakened me. I struggled, but my last conscious breath faded. I felt as if I was floating away into darkness. Everything happened so fast. I didn't have time to signal for help, didn't see the face of my assailant, and had no idea who had abducted me. The last thing I remembered was the chilling feel of the late afternoon air before darkness consumed everything. I realized this wasn't just a coincidence or an attack from a random person, but a coordinated and deliberate assault. This worried me even more, because it meant I had become someone's complete target. A blinding light made me squint, trying to adjust my focus. The first thing I saw was an old, stained concrete ceiling, and the air was thick with a musty metallic smell. I shifted slightly and found myself tied to an old wooden chair with ropes so tight they bit into my wrists. I tried to struggle, but the ropes only dug in deeper. Fear began to creep into my mind. I tried to recall the events leading up to this and realized I had been abducted. Two burly men stood guarding the door not far away. They were both alphas. I could tell from their strong pheromones and dominant demeanor. But their scent was entirely different from Silus's. These were definitely not his men. "Awake, little one?" A voice from a dark corner spoke. The tall, lean figure of a man emerged from the shadows. He had a scar running across his face and eyes full of vengeance. "Tell me, how did you sneak into our warehouse a year ago and photograph our illegal guns? Who sent you?" His voice was filled with fury. I tried to gather my thoughts, confused by what they were saying. I didn't remember entering any gang's warehouse a year ago, but that wasn't the point now. The important thing was to survive. I tried to deny it. I don't know anything about that. I'm just an officer. Before I could finish, the door creaked open, followed by footsteps. My heart nearly stopped when I saw Silus Blackwood step into the room. The powerful pheromone scent of the alpha I had been intimate with just a few days ago immediately permeated the room. The atmosphere shifted completely, the tension palpably thick. The man who had captured me widened his eyes upon seeing Silus appear. "Blackwood, what are you doing here?" he growled, as his two subordinates began to draw their guns. Silus said nothing, but his eyes briefly swept over me, tied to the chair, before he turned to face the rival gang leader without fear. The pheromone scents of both alphas clashed in the air, creating an immense pressure that I could feel. "I've come to take my Omega back," Silus said in a calm voice, yet filled with authority. "Release him, and I'll give you the information you want." He tossed a folder onto the table next to the man. I looked at the folder with utter shock, because it was the exact same folder I had risked my life to steal from Silus's warehouse months ago. It contained crucial evidence about the rival gang's illegal firearms. The gang leader opened the folder, and his expression instantly changed as he saw the contents. Where did you get this information?" he roared at Silus. My eyes widened in disbelief. That information was what I had been trying to conceal all along. "That's not important. What's important is that you'll get this information if you release my Omega," Silus calmly replied. The man hesitated for a moment, then looked at me with vengeful eyes. "No, I'll kill him," he shouted. Silus smiled faintly, a dangerous glint in his eyes. "You'd better not, because if it comes to force, I'll win anyway." Silus's voice was firm and full of confidence, making the other party feel his superior power. Eventually, the man backed down. He ordered his subordinates to untie me. I collapsed to the floor, weak. Silus walked over to me, easily scooping me up in a bridal carry. I felt his warmth and his scent envelop me. He leaned down and whispered in my ear, "You're my Omega. From now on, I won't let you disappear again." I didn't know how to feel, between shock, confusion, and a complete lack of understanding of the situation that had just unfolded. He stepped out of the abandoned warehouse with several subordinates trailing him. I tried to resist, but my strength in such an exhausted state was no match for this alpha. As soon as we reached the waiting black luxury car, he easily put me inside. I sat as far from him as possible, trying to maintain distance from his pheromones, which were still strong and influencing me. As the car began to move, Silus turned to look at me with eyes too deep to comprehend. "You know you're mine now, right?" he said in a voice that sent a chill down my spine. I didn't answer, just turned my face away to look out the window, angry and confused. He chuckled softly before reaching out and gripping my chin, turning my face back to him. I tried to pull away, but he held my face firmly. "Be quiet, Damian." His voice wasn't harsh, but it held an authority that silenced me. And then he leaned in and brazenly pressed his lips against mine. It wasn't a gentle kiss, but one that clearly asserted ownership, right in front of his subordinates in the front seat. My face burned with shame and rage. When he pulled away, he turned to his men and spoke loudly and clearly. "This is all of your master, and you shall respect this Omega." I stared at him in astonishment. What in the world was happening? I was just a spy who failed a mission, but now I was the property of a mafia boss, and he'd even declared it in front of his men. I felt as if I was bound by invisible chains forged from an unexpected situation and that one-night encounter. The luxurious car pulled up in front of Greystone Manor, a grand Gothic-style mansion standing proudly in the heart of the city. I felt an opulent yet intimidating atmosphere. The massive wooden doors were opened by two hulking bodyguards. They bowed slightly to Silus before we stepped inside. The interior of the mansion was intricately decorated with vintage furniture. Each piece looked expensive and indicated the owner's status. Silus's scent, as the alpha owner of this place, permeated every corner of the room, making me feel strangely uncomfortable. "This is everyone's master," Silus reiterated to the bodyguards and servants lined up in the hallway. Everyone bowed respectfully to me. I felt like I was in a nightmare I couldn't wake from. I tried to keep my expression as neutral as possible, even though inside I was screaming with confusion and shame. I was an undercover police officer, not a doll to be controlled by a mafia boss. Silus led me through the wide hall to a large living room. He settled onto a dark leather sofa and swept his gaze over me, where I still stood motionless. "Sit, Damian." His voice was softer than before, yet still held authority. I reluctantly walked and sat on the opposite sofa, trying to avoid direct eye contact with him. "You don't need to be afraid of me," he said, noticing my demeanor. "You'll be safe here. No one will dare to touch you." I looked up at him, bewildered. "Safe? You're holding me hostage," I retorted, exasperated. "I'm a police officer. You have no right to do this." Silus chuckled, a cunning glint in his eyes. "A police officer, really? An Omega police officer bold enough to infiltrate an Alpha's lair like mine to this extent? You're probably not just an ordinary officer." His words sent a chill down my spine. He knew. Silus's words felt like a slap to the face. He revealed he knew the truth. I sat rigid, trying to think of a response, but my brain seemed to have shut down for a moment. "How did you know?" I asked faintly. Fear began to gnaw at my heart. I was just an Omega spy, not someone trained to confront situations like this directly. Silus smiled slightly, his eyes sharp like a hawk's watching its prey. "Your scent," he said. "The scent of an Omega police officer trying to hide in the shadows, but who released their scent that night. I remember it well." His words made my face burn with shame and anger. I hated that my body was so sensitive to him, and I hated that I couldn't control it. He moved closer, the distance between us shrinking until I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. His pheromones slowly began to spread, a powerful scent that started to affect me again. "You're a police spy sent to catch me, but you ended up becoming my Omega," he said in a low voice, deep and hypnotic. I could feel my body starting to respond to his scent uncontrollably once more. "This is the truth, Damian." He gently reached out and touched my cheek. I flinched slightly but didn't push him away. He stroked it softly, as if exploring something on my face. "Your scent. It's so sweet I can't resist." His words made my heart pound, not just from fear, but also from a strange feeling that was infiltrating me. It was a feeling I tried to deny all along, but now it was becoming clearer and clearer. Silus's offer replayed in my mind all night. I couldn't sleep, tossing and turning on the large bed, trying to find a way out of this situation. As an imprisoned Omega and a target of the Mafia, my options were limited. Being his spy was dangerous, but being in his clutches with no power was equally perilous. I felt confused and alone like never before. The next morning, the rain poured down relentlessly, as if the heavens had opened up. The atmosphere inside the mansion was quieter than usual. I walked to the window, watching the continuous downpour. Suddenly, the door opened, and Silus walked into the room. The scent of his pheromones, mixed with the smell of rain, calmed me slightly, but my heart was still filled with suspicion. "Have you thought about my offer yet?" he asked in a calm voice. I turned to look at him, trying to read the Alpha's expression, but I couldn't guess what he was thinking. I don't know how I can trust you," I said, speaking my mind. Silus walked closer until we were only a few steps apart. He reached out to touch the cold glass. "I know it's hard to trust someone like me," he said softly, but his eyes were sharp. "Especially after you saw me use the information you risked your life for to trade for you." His words startled me. He brazenly admitted that he used the crucial information I had obtained to help me. This meant he knew everything about my mission, and he wouldn't hesitate to use it for his own benefit. I felt both angry and confused, but at the same time, I sensed a frightening sincerity. "My world is harsher than you think, Damian," he continued. "I have to do everything I can to survive and protect what I consider important. I've never trusted anyone but myself," he said, his voice lowering. There was a certain glint in his eyes that I couldn't comprehend. "But that night, your scent, It made me realize you weren't just an ordinary spy. The pheromones of seriousness and power clearly emanated from him. I need you here, not just to help me, but to keep you in my sight. His confession in the rain made me start to see him in a different light. He hadn't softened, but he was revealing the raw and dangerous side of his mafia nature, which was both intriguing and terrifying at the same time. After that day, Silus didn't force me to accept his offer immediately, but he still kept a close eye on me. I remained confined to the mansion, though I was allowed to walk in the garden under the watchful eyes of bodyguards. I used that time to observe Silus's behavior and the people in his organization, hoping to gather more information and assess the situation. I learned that Silus's empire wasn't as stable as I thought. There were whispers of discontent and internal divisions within the gang. One day, as I was walking in the garden near Silus's office, I heard a heated argument coming from inside. I crept closer, trying to listen to what they were saying. "Sir Silus, we can't let the Roman gang expand their influence any further. They've started encroaching on our territory," one voice said urgently. Another, more familiar voice, replied, "Calm down, Marcus. We need to plan carefully." That was the voice of James, Silus's head of security, a loyal alpha. "Plan what else? They've sent people to attack us. You should be more decisive." Marcus's voice was still filled with discontent. I could sense the pheromones of anger radiating from him. The other bodyguards on duty also started to look displeased. Silus was silent for a moment before he replied in a cold tone, "I know what's happening, and I'll deal with it my way." His voice was full of authority, silencing everyone. But even though his words sounded decisive, I noticed a flicker of worry in Silus's eyes when he walked out of his office. He looked more stressed than usual, and the pheromones of exhaustion clearly emanated from him. That made me realize that even as the most powerful gang leader, an alpha like Silus, he had weaknesses and problems to face within his own organization. This observation made me start to see some openings and opportunities to exploit this situation. I knew that direct defiance could lead to danger, but finding a loophole and exploiting the internal conflicts within his organization might be my only chance to escape this situation. I decided to employ a different strategy, to act as a temporary ally. That evening, Silus came to my room again. He looked more stressed than usual. I decided to speak to him directly. "I know you're having internal problems," I began. Silus paused slightly, looking at me with surprise. "I don't need your opinion," he said curtly, "but I might be able to help you." I countered immediately, trying to keep my voice steady. "I know more about other gangs' networks and their vulnerabilities than anyone." I looked into the alpha's eyes to convey my seriousness. I knew this was a dangerous move, but it was necessary. Silus continued to stare at me with an unreadable gaze. He stood still for a moment, as if evaluating my words. "Why would you help me, Omega?" he asked in a low voice, now tinged with suspicion. "Don't you hate me?" I sighed. "I hate being captured, but I don't want the city to fall into more chaos. If your gang weakens, the city will become even more dangerous, and I know you don't want that." Silus was silent again. Finally, he let out a long sigh. "All right, if that's the case, let's try it." His voice still conveyed distrust, but it was a sign of acceptance. He walked closer, raising his hand to gently touch my cheek. "But remember, if you betray me, you'll regret it." His voice was laced with a warning that carried a hidden meaning. I knew this was the beginning of an unexpected alliance, but it was also a crucial first step to survive and potentially get some information back to the police. After I started providing information and helping Silus plan against the Roman gang, our relationship began to change. He seemed to trust me more, and at times, he even showed a concern I never expected from an alpha like him. Although I remained wary, I began to see a different side of Silus, one distinct from the ruthless mafia boss I knew. This made me increasingly confused about my own role. I still secretly kept the most crucial information, intending to use it as evidence for the police in the future, if I ever had a chance to escape. One evening, I was summoned to Silus's office, which was unusual since he typically came to my room. I walked into the office, where the atmosphere was tenser than usual. Silus stood in front of his desk, his face grim. James stood beside him, looking pale. "Damian." Silus called my name in a low voice, his face filled with displeasure and disappointment. I felt an ominous premonition. "Tell me what this is about." He threw a file onto the desk with a loud thud. I saw photographs and some secret reports. It was the information I had tried to send to the police. My heart sank. "Who told you?" I asked in utter shock. I was sure no one knew about it. Silus didn't answer, but James stepped forward, his face filled with regret mixed with fear. "I'm sorry, Sir Silus. I saw Damian secretly sending information to the police." I turned to look at James in disbelief. He betrayed me. I felt as though I had been stabbed in the back by one of the people I thought I could trust most in this mansion. Pheromones of shock and rage emanated from me. Silus walked closer, his face full of disappointment. "I trusted you, Damian. I gave you a chance." His voice was filled with coldness and pain. I instantly knew that the situation had truly turned. James's betrayal shattered all my plans in an instant, and now, I was in more danger than ever before. The scent of Silus's rage pheromones filled the room, making it hard to breathe. I looked at James in disbelief, unable to fathom that someone who seemed so loyal could betray me. Silus walked towards me slowly, his eyes red with the fury of a crazed alpha, making me feel increasingly weak. "I never thought you'd dare to betray me to this extent, Damian." His voice was as hard as stone. I tried to gather all my wits. "I didn't betray anyone. I was just doing my job. You're the one who imprisoned me," I retorted fearlessly, even though I was terrified inside. Silus stopped in front of me. He raised his hand and squeezed my jaw tightly until it hurt. His eyes, fixed on me, were crushing me, making me almost unable to stand. "Your job, huh? And sleeping with me that night was also part of your job, wasn't it?" His words numbed me. Shame coursed through my body. "Don't bring that into this," I yelled back, tears starting to well up from pain and confusion. Silus chuckled coldly in his throat. "Why shouldn't it be relevant, Omega? Wasn't it the beginning of everything?" He shoved me hard, making me collapse to the floor. James tried to step forward to help, but Silus shot him a look that made James freeze. "Did you think I'd let you go so easily, Damian, after you've learned my secrets and become mine?" Silus circled me like a hunter stalking its prey. I felt despair wash over me, but at the same time, a spark ignited within me. I wouldn't give up. I had to find a way to escape from here and expose all the truth about this alpha, no matter the cost. After last night's events, everything changed completely. I was moved to a much smaller and more secure room. My presence was still desired by Silus, but he treated me with increased coldness and harshness. I knew this was my punishment for the betrayal, but at the same time, I began to understand more clearly how helpless I truly was. I tried to find a way out, but every time I thought of doing something, Silus's men would appear, as if he could read my every thought. Days passed. I lived like a prisoner in a gilded cage. I received 3 meals a day, and a bodyguard constantly watched the door. I started to feel desperate. I was an Omega with no power, unable to fight against a powerful alpha like Silus. I tried to think of new plans, but my mind seemed utterly blank. One morning, I woke up with severe nausea. I rushed to the bathroom and vomited everything. My body felt weak and intensely dizzy. I tried to walk back to the bed, but my legs gave out before I could steady myself. Suddenly, the room door opened. Silus walked in with a breakfast tray. The smell of the food, which normally never bothered me, now made me feel even worse. I tried to hold my breath, but it was no use. "What's wrong with you?" Silus's voice sounded slightly alarmed. He walked straight towards me, his expression different from usual. I felt faint, my body turning cold, and suddenly the whole world spun. I collapsed into Silus's arms, my eyes closing. The last thing I heard was Silus's frantic voice shouting for his bodyguards. "Get a doctor! Quickly!" I slowly opened my eyes again. The The first sensation was an overwhelming weakness throughout my body. I tried to move but felt a dull ache in my lower abdomen. My gaze swept around the room, and I saw Silus standing by the bed, his expression visibly concerned. Beside him, a small woman in a white lab coat, who appeared to be a doctor, was writing notes in a notebook. "What did the doctor say?" Silus asked in a low voice, tinged with a concern I had never heard from him before. The woman looked up at me briefly before replying, "It's morning sickness, Sir Silus. It's common for omegas in early pregnancy, but Mr. Damian's symptoms were quite severe, causing him to faint." The doctor's words made my eyes widen. Was I really pregnant? This truth hit me like a lightning bolt. I turned to look at Silus, shocked and confused. I tried to say something, but my voice caught in my throat. Silus walked closer, placing one hand gently on my stomach. His touch was surprisingly warm and tender. "You heard her, Damian," he said, his voice full of emotions I couldn't decipher. "You're carrying our child." I stared into the Alpha's eyes. His gaze no longer held only possessiveness. Instead, there was something akin to quiet concern and burgeoning attachment. I felt a mix of confusion and an indescribable feeling. It wasn't love, but it wasn't just hatred either. Silus knew I was pregnant, and he no longer seemed angry about me being a spy. Instead, he clearly showed responsibility and protectiveness. It was a silent vow between us, a promise that bound us together by the tiny life that was about to be born. From the day the doctor confirmed my pregnancy, my life in Greystone Mansion changed completely. Silus didn't just confine me. He also intensified security measures around me, as if I were his most precious treasure. His men watched over me closely, no longer as a prisoner, but as an Omega who was about to give birth to the heir of a mafia boss. Every one of my movements was monitored. Everyone who came near me had to undergo thorough checks. I felt as though I was trapped in a golden cage, many times stronger than before. Initially, I continued to resist and be wary of his every action. But as time passed, the subtle, controlling care from this ruthless Alpha began to chip away at the walls in my heart. He often personally took care of me, bringing me food I could eat and patiently enduring my severe morning sickness. His eyes, once full of power and possessiveness, now clearly contained a mix of concern and warmth, though still tinged with an even stronger sense of ownership. One day, as I sat looking out the window, Silus came and sat beside me. "Are you feeling all right?" he asked gently. I nodded slightly. "Better, thank you," I replied. I was silent for a moment before gathering the courage to say what was on my mind. "Why are you being so good to me when I tried to turn you in?" Silus sighed softly. "Because you're carrying my child," he answered in a calm voice, but his eyes indicated complex emotions. "And because I won't let anyone lay a hand on you or our child." His words made my heart pound, not from fear, but from a feeling akin to warmth spreading through me. I looked into the Alpha's eyes and saw an undeniable sincerity. The cracks in our relationship, once filled with misunderstanding and conflict, were being mended by an unexpected bond, and by the tiny life that was about to be born, bringing with it new tensions in Silus's mafia world. Days flew by quickly under Silus's strict care. My morning sickness began to subside, and my stomach started to show visibly. The physical changes forced me to accept the reality that I was going to be a parent. I still thought of my old life as a police officer, and the guilt of my failed mission still gnawed at me. But now, my world was tied to the Alpha who owned this mansion and the small life growing inside me. Silus maintained his stern and cold demeanor, but his actions conveyed a concern I never expected. He often came to talk to me about the baby, about his future, and about the gang. I began to realize the pressure he was facing as a mafia boss. He was fighting to maintain power and protect his territory, and now he had me and the baby as additional responsibilities. One night, Silus entered my room in casual clothes, looking slightly more relaxed than usual. His pheromones were strangely warm and comforting. "I've been thinking about our future," he said, sitting down in the chair beside the bed. "You know you can't go back to being a police officer, right? His words hit me hard. I knew that impossibility. Both the fact that I was his and that I was carrying his child disqualified me from ever being a police officer again. So what do I do now? I asked softly. I can't cause trouble for anyone else. Silus reached out and gently placed his hand on my stomach. You're here with me, Damian. You'll be safe, he said in a decisive yet tender voice. You have our child. You have to decide what's most important. His words echoed in my head. I had to choose between a duty I couldn't return to and a new life emerging with the Alpha, the father of the child within me. It was the hardest decision in my life as an Omega. I looked down at my swollen belly, feeling the little life inside kick. I knew it was time for a decisive choice. I had to go to the police station to put an end to everything. That night, when Silus came into the room, I gathered all my courage. I want to ask you something. I began, my voice trembling slightly. Silus was silent for a moment before looking at me with an intense gaze. Go on, he replied calmly. I need to go back to the police station. I have to see my chief and tell him I can't continue the mission. I'm going to resign. I spoke quickly. I didn't know how the Alpha in front of me would react. Silus slowly stood up. He stepped closer until I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. All right, he finally said. His answer surprised me. But there's a condition. Silus extended his hand, holding a plain-looking wristwatch. You have to wear this. I looked at the watch suspiciously. He gently touched my wrist. This is a wiretap. It's not that I don't trust you, Damian, but now all the other gangs know you're my Omega. It will be even more unsafe for you. His words sent a chill down my spine. He was more farsighted than I thought. I hesitated for a moment, but thinking of the baby inside me and my own safety, I nodded in acceptance. The next morning, Silus was waiting in the hallway. He wore a dark coat that concealed his body. I'll go with you, but I'll wait in the car, far enough away so no one notices, he said. I nodded. When we arrived at the Westbrook Central Police Station, I walked inside with a pounding heart. Chief George looked at me with clear displeasure. What is this, Damian? You've been gone for so long, and now you come back wanting to resign. He barked at me. I'm no longer suited for this job, Chief, I replied firmly, trying to keep my voice steady. I didn't tell him the whole truth about Silus or the baby inside me. I knew it would bring danger to me and the baby, and many more complications. When the conversation ended, I walked out and got into the car Silus had parked out of sight. Silus looked at me, his eyes full of questions. How was it? I let out a deep sigh. My future is over. Silus smiled faintly. He pulled me close, pressing a gentle yet deep kiss on my lips. No, Damian, it's just beginning. The pheromones of happiness, relief, and bonding permeated the car. The driver, one of Silus's subordinates, drove off, heading back to Greystone Mansion, leaving my past behind. Months later, Greystone Mansion was filled with the soft, sweet scent of a newly delivered Omega. I was recovering in my bedroom, but now I felt a warmth and security I'd never known before. Beside me, a small baby slept soundly in a crib, his tiny heartbeat a steady rhythm. His pheromones were a perfect blend of my Omega gentleness and Silus's Alpha strength. Silus entered the room with a breakfast tray. He looked tired from the sleepless nights of the past few days, but his face was filled with a happiness and tenderness I had never seen before. He placed the tray on the bedside table and walked to sit beside the baby's crib. He gazed at our little son, his eyes brimming with love and concern. I gently took his hand. You did great, Silus, I said with a smile. He turned to look at me, a sparkle in his eyes that made my heart flutter. We did great, Damian, he said in a low voice. I leaned against him comfortably. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. The mafia world was still full of danger and uncertainty. But now I had Silus and we had our little one to protect. My life as a police officer was completely over, and I no longer regretted it. I had found a new meaning for the word family in the most unexpected place. My scent, Silus's scent, and the pure, sweet scent of our son mingled together into true happiness. It was the epilogue of a new beginning, the conclusion of an unforeseen story, and the prologue to our family. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss our next video.